Welcome to the Democrats' best case scenario for the upcoming midterm, so let's start. So for the deep blue states, those would be states like Oregon and Washington, which would be a primary win of 12%. California would be a easy win for Democrats alongside Hawaii. Yeah, I'm gonna talk about it in a bit. So Illinois, New York, Connecticut, Vermont, Maryland would be easy win for the Democrats alongside Colorado, where I see Michael Bennet easily winning by a safe margin. It could very well happen if things go well for the Democrats, and it's Colorado which helps them. So yeah, you saw the polling wall for Washington. It's pretty much an easy done deal if things go well for Democrats on election day. So Murray against Miley could happen, but I think perhaps Colorado I see 12%. Well, Washington, you could make an argument that is like 13%. And now for the ruby red states, so those still would be, North Dakota, South Dakota, Idaho would still be a red state, Kansas, Oklahoma, both of them of course, Arkansas, Louisiana, Alabama, Kentucky still would be a safe state, alongside Indiana and South Carolina. All these three are right here barely go by a safe margin in my opinion. But if we go to Wikipedia, and with the Libertarians splitting some votes away from Todd Young, it wouldn't be too outrageous to think that if things go well for the Democrats on election day, that Indiana goes by a margin of 12% to 14%, while in Kentucky, even in a blue wave scenario, I really don't see Charles Booker having a chance. It would really take a lot of work for him, and same margin in Indiana. And lastly for South Carolina, I think Tim Scott's incumbency would help him quite a bit. And if you didn't know, there's the polling is right here, and there's also Larry Adams who's running, but even then I doubt it affects it that much, and all these go by a safe margin. And now moving on to the likely states. So first of all, for the Democrats, there is only one, but it's really clear to see which one it would be. So for New Hampshire, in this race, it's Maggie Hassan against Don Baldock, and Don Baldock has actually gotten some of the money by the super PAC, by the GOP, taken out and repurposed into other Senate races like I think Pennsylvania. So you can see the polling, hypothetically speaking, if things really go bad for Baldock, maybe a gaffe or two, there is a solid chance alongside a good midterm for Democrats that Maggie Hassan would be able to win here by a decent margin of 6 to 8%, or probably more like a 7% margin at most. And yeah, that's it for the likely states for Democrats. And now for the Republicans. So first of all, for Missouri. For Missouri, it's Eric Schmidt who won in the GOP primary and was endorsed by Donald Trump. I mean, technically. And against Valentine, who is not that good of a Democrat candidate, and probably even in the best case scenario, she would only maybe get around, I'm guessing, around just below the safe margin threshold of 12%. So I think that would be around 11.75%. And moving on to the next one, so for Iowa, where a lot of people are doubting voting for Chuck Grassley because he is 89 years old, so a lot of people are really turned off by that. And there's Michael Franken, who has some issues, personal ones. And for the polling, as you can see, theoretically speaking, if there's enough voters that would not like to have a 90-year-old senator, then Michael Franken would be able to do slightly better, but it's mostly about Chuck Grassley's age affecting the race. And in the best case scenario for Democrats, Iowa would drop down to only a likely margin 10 to 12%, and Chuck Grassley still wins here kind of easily. And moving on to Alaska. So in Alaska, it's really more about ranked choice voting and perhaps something happening and between two Republicans, those being Murkowski and Chewbacca, somehow the Democrats winning here. But for the polling, you can see here, Murkowski is most likely going to, in our timeline, win and stay as senator. But if things go some certain way, you may see some votes become closer, and in the best case scenario for Democrats, Lisa Murkowski will win here by, the margin is hard to say, but I'm guessing 7 to 9%, something like that. Who knows? But let's go to one of my favorite ones, in my opinion, for Utah. So in Utah, it's Mike Lee, the incumbent Republican, against Evan McMullin, who is running as an independent candidate, but is backed by the Democrats, who did a really smart choice by not nominating someone and backing him. And the polling, I mean, it does show McMullen really doing better, but it's really just because of one pollster. And yeah, so what I believe could occur is that there is a chance that Utah could drop to a lean margin, but I doubt that. I still think that likely incumbency would help him, but he would only win here by margin of 6 to 8% against Evan McMullen. So as you can see, the Democrats have 47 seats against the Republicans 45 seats. And moving on to the lean states, so the first one above all else is Florida. Marco Rubio is the current senator in Florida, and Val Demings is a Democrat, and she is running a decent campaign, and she does have some potential perhaps in the future, but her being from Florida does really hurt her career because of how bad Florida Democrats have been. And as you can see, it's really tight according to the polls. And theoretically speaking, and if half of those undecided voters would go to Val Demings, then this would really be quite close. But even in the best case scenario for the Democrats, saying that something good happens and the economy gets better and the gas prices drop, even in that scenario, I see Marco Rubio still winning by a margin of 3 to 5%, but still quite well for Val Demings. And now for the next race, that would be Georgia. So Georgia, it's with incumbent Senator Warnock against Herschel Walker. So Herschel Walker did okay in the debates, which did help him, but if he has some form of a gaffe or some dirty laundry that happens last moment, then you could actually see this get even better for Democrats. And the Libertarian candidates right here could also have Democrats, but it's more about Warnock incumbency alongside Herschel Walker, perhaps in a best case scenario for Democrats having some scandal right on election day. And I see Warnock winning by a margin of 2 to 4%. That would suit in this timeline. And now for Arizona, where Kelly, the Democrat, is on the defensive against Blake Masters, the GOP nominee. And let's just go down to what the pollsters are saying. So it's quite neck and neck, but the main issue for Blake Masters is really the Libertarian voters, which could really spoil the race. And theoretically speaking, if that would happen, if the Libertarians in Arizona, since Arizona is more of a Libertarian-like state, it could help Victor. But in the best case scenario for the Democrats, I see Mark Kelly winning by a decent margin of 2 to 4%, and yeah, that would help the Democrats quite a lot. And now for the low lean states, those would be first of all for Pennsylvania, with Dr. Oz against Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman. So this race would really come down to John Fetterman being able to get some of the populist Trump supporters on his side while not losing in the suburban areas. And oh wait, let me just go down. So this is what the pollsters are saying at the moment. Really a true toss-up by all means. And John Fetterman is leading in most polls, and except Wick. Just like I said a couple of seconds ago, if John Fetterman is able to keep his numbers in the suburbs while gaining with more fiscally populist voters, then alongside not losing too many minority voters to Dr. Oz, I see John Fetterman being able to win here by a low lean margin of 1 to 3%. And now for Nevada. In Nevada, where Masto the incumbent is facing and Laxalt, the best case scenario for Masto is that the pollsters are wrong yet again in Nevada, like they've been in the past, and she's able to somehow pull it off just like in the past. And that could very well happen, and where the Democrats win there in Nevada, just like North Carolina, where the Democrats come close, but always the Republicans barely win. And in this timeline, I'd see Cortez Masto barely winning by a lean margin, probably like 1 to 3%, but really it would vote really close to a lead, or I should say a top margin, so 1.5%, but technically 1 to 3%, but yeah, that's it. Moving on to the tilt states. So for the first one, that would be Wisconsin, where Ron Johnson in 2016 won by 3.4%. Now in 2022, he's facing Mandela Barnes, who really is fumbling the bag for the Democrats and has shown that perhaps the Democrats should have gone for a different candidate. But in the blue wave scenario where everything, or most things, go well for the Democrats, it really would be quite close. And in my honest opinion, I still see Ron Johnson barely winning by a tilt margin because of how lackluster of a campaign Mandela Barnes has ran, and I see Ron Johnson, even in this scenario, winning by a high tilt margin of 0.75%. And yeah, so let's move on to North Carolina. So in 2016, it was up 5.7% Burr win, and in 2022, he's retiring, and the GOP nominated Ted Budd against Cherry Beasley, who is an okay candidate. She might get a lot of turnout with African Americans, but the white vote will still be quite a problem for Democrats. And here's the Libertarian voters who could spoil the race to some extent. We don't know yet. And finally, for the best case scenario for Democrats, it's a bit similar to Wisconsin, where I see the GOP still winning by a tilt margin. It does vote to the left of Wisconsin, and I see Ted Budd winning by 0.5%, which would be a really bad showing for him. And now for Ohio, which I think would be the ultimate toss-up because of the coalitions. In 2016, Portman won here by 20.9%, but he's retiring, and in 2022, it's Vance, the Trump-backed candidate, against Tim Ryan, the Democrat, the House representative, who's a Democrat, of course. And this race would really go down to J.D. Vance now campaigning and taking the race for granted to some extent, while Tim Ryan has done okay and has gotten some momentum, but still quite close. And theoretically speaking, because he has ran a campaign that is emphasizing on populism, which would help in the Rust Belt, theoretically speaking, if he's able to get the coalition and able to run a Joe Manchin-like campaign to some extent, where he's able to make himself look like a moderate, while being able to get some of the Obama-Trump voters to his side, I see Tim Ryan in the best case scenario barely winning in Ohio by a margin of 0.25%. As you can see in the blue wave scenario where everything goes well for the Democrats, they won with 52 seats against the Republicans' 48 seats. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to leave a like, join the channel membership, and as always, see you next time.